I'm Emily Mitchell, 32, and last week my sister burned every designer dress I owned because I wouldn't give her $22,000 for a picnic. Yes, you read that right, a picnic. The worst part? She had no idea I'd been secretly funding her entire college education. As part of a comprehensive $180,000 investment plan I'd developed using my financial advisory background. When you sacrifice everything to raise your sibling after your parents die, you don't expect gratitude. But you certainly don't expect arson. Sometimes the people we love the most are capable of the deepest betrayal. But what happened next changed everything about how I handle family crises. If you're watching this from a place where family is everything, give this video a like and subscribe. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this family drama unfolds. And what happened when I finally applied professional financial planning principles to stop enabling my sister's entitled behavior. I should start at the beginning so you understand how we got here. 14 years ago, when I was 18 and Brooklyn was only 10, our parents were driving home from their anniversary dinner when a drunk driver hit them head-on. They died instantly. One phone call changed everything. I was a freshman in college with dreams of studying abroad, joining a sorority and having the full university experience. Instead, I became my sister's legal guardian. There was some life insurance money, but not nearly enough. Our parents' modest home had a mortgage that ate up most of what was left after funeral expenses. Our only other family was our Aunt Margaret, our father's sister, who lived across the country in Oregon. She offered to take Brooklyn, but I couldn't bear to separate what little family we had left. Looking back, maybe that was my first mistake, thinking I could be both sister and parent at 18. But it was also the beginning of my journey into financial planning out of sheer necessity. I dropped to part-time status at the state university and picked up 2 jobs. Writing during the day while Brooklyn was at school and bartending at night when she was asleep. But I also started reading every financial planning book I could get my hands on. I had to make every dollar count, and I needed to understand how to build long-term security for both of us. Those first few years were a blur of exhaustion, grief, and responsibility. Brooklyn seemed to understand at first. She was a sweet kid who would leave little notes in my textbooks. "You're my hero. Thank you for taking care of me. I love you more than ice cream." Those notes kept me going when I wanted to collapse from exhaustion. When I finally graduated with my marketing degree after 6 years instead of 4, Brooklyn sat in the audience beaming, holding a homemade sign that read, "My sister rocks." I remember thinking all the sacrifices had been worth it. By then, I'd also completed my financial planning certification through night courses, determined to never again be caught unprepared for financial crisis. Things started changing when Brooklyn hit high school. The sweet, grateful girl began morphing into someone I hardly recognized. She wanted the same designer clothes her classmates wore, complained about our small 2-bedroom apartment, and rolled her eyes when I talked about budgeting. "Why can't we just be normal?" became her favorite phrase. Meanwhile, I was finally gaining traction in my career. After 2 years as a marketing assistant, I leveraged my financial planning background to land a job at a prestigious firm in Boston. My salary tripled, and my husband Michael, an IT consultant I'd met through a client referral, and I were able to put a down payment on a beautiful downtown condominium in a good school district. The condo wasn't just a home, it was part of my investment strategy. We'd purchased in an up-and-coming neighborhood that I'd researched extensively. The property had already appreciated 15% in the 2 years we'd owned it, and the rental income from similar units in our building was generating strong cash flow for other investors. I thought Brooklyn would be thrilled her own bedroom with floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of the city skyline, a building with amenities that impressed her friends like a rooftop deck and fitness center. Instead, she complained that it wasn't in the right neighborhood where the cool kids lived. As my career advanced, I was invited to more corporate events and client dinners. I needed to look the part, so I slowly built a collection of quality dresses and business attire. But unlike my impulsive younger self, I approached this strategically. I budgeted carefully, researched each purchase, and bought investment pieces that would maintain their value over time. Each dress represented a calculated decision: the black Diane von Furstenberg I wore when I landed the pharmaceutical account, the red Bagley Mishka that saw me through my first industry awards ceremony where our team won. These weren't just clothes to me. They were strategic investments in my professional image and symbols of my journey from desperate teenager to successful financial professional. When Brooklyn graduated high school, I was so proud. Despite her attitude problems, she'd maintained good grades and was accepted to several universities. She chose Northeastern expensive but prestigious. What Brooklyn didn't know was that I was covering her entire tuition as part of a comprehensive education investment plan I'd developed. I'd calculated the total cost of her 4-year education, factored in inflation and potential increases, and created a dedicated investment portfolio to fund it. The monthly payments were automatically transferred from a separate education account I'd been building since she was 12, fed by dividends from carefully selected blue-chip stocks and index funds. I wanted her to have what I couldn't, a normal college experience without working multiple jobs. But I also wanted to teach her financial responsibility gradually. My plan was to reveal the investment strategy when she graduated, showing her how strategic planning and disciplined saving had made her education possible. I even had projections showing how the same principles could help her build her own wealth after graduation. Looking back, I see how my good intentions were setting us both up for disaster. I wasn't just paying her tuition. I was giving her a monthly allowance for expenses that was more than my entire take-home pay had been during my first job, all while trying to teach her about financial responsibility. The irony is painful now, but here's what I didn't realize while I was carefully tracking every dollar of Brooklyn's expenses in my detailed spreadsheets. Categorizing her education costs as investment in human capital, she had no idea about the sophisticated financial planning happening behind the scenes. My investment portfolio for her education had grown to over $180,000 over the years, generating returns that helped offset the rising costs of tuition. I had dividend-paying stocks, index funds, and even some rental property income specifically allocated to her future. I was proud of my financial acumen, but I was also creating a dangerous disconnect between Brooklyn's reality and her expectations. By her sophomore year, Brooklyn rarely came home on weekends. Her social media showed a girl I hardly recognized partying at exclusive clubs, wearing clothes I knew we couldn't afford, posing with friends at expensive restaurants. When I asked about it, she'd say they were just pictures or that her friends paid. I wanted to believe her. What I didn't realize was that Brooklyn had created an entirely different narrative about our family for her new college friends. According to her Instagram captions, we were wealthy. In one post, she referred to my family's summer place. We've never owned a second home, though I had been researching vacation rental properties as potential investments. In another, she thanked Daddy for her new laptop. I had bought it for her birthday, funding it from my technology allocation budget. She was living in a fantasy world, and I was unknowingly funding it with my carefully planned investment returns. The real Brooklyn and the online Brooklyn were growing further apart, and I was about to find out just how deep the deception went. The first real warning sign came during Brooklyn's winter break of sophomore year. She returned home with 4 large suitcases full of new clothes, many still with tags attached. When I questioned her about how she could afford Gucci loafers and a Prada bag, she shrugged and said, "My friend Lex's dad owns a boutique. She gets everything at cost and hooks me up." I should have pressed harder, but I was working 60-hour weeks trying to secure a promotion that would help me diversify my investment portfolio further. My financial planning business was taking off, and I was managing investment accounts for several high-net-worth clients. Northeastern had raised tuition by 12% that year, but my education fund was performing well enough to cover the increase without touching our primary assets. I was so focused on the numbers, on making sure the financial foundation was solid, that I missed the warning signs of what was happening to Brooklyn's character and values. The real trouble started when Brooklyn began bringing her new friends home, Madison, Taylor, and Alexis, all from wealthy families with trust funds and unlimited credit cards. They would lounge around our condominium making subtly disparaging comments about the neighborhood or the quaint size of our home. I overheard Madison asking Brooklyn if this was her childhood home that she was sentimentally attached to, as if trying to understand why anyone would choose to live there. Brooklyn seemed embarrassed by our lifestyle, which struck me as ironic given that our condo was worth more than most people's entire net worth and was appreciating at 8% annually. When I came home early one day, I caught her showing her friends my closet, letting them try on my carefully curated collection of work dresses. "My sister's stuff is so basic, but some of it's actually designer," she was saying as I walked in. The girls were posing in my clothes, taking selfies. My heart sank when I saw Madison stretching out the silk of my favorite Burberry dress. The one I'd purchased as a calculated investment piece for client presentations, researching its resale value and cost per wear before buying. "What's going on here?" I asked from the doorway. The girls had the decency to look embarrassed, but Brooklyn just rolled her eyes. "Chill out, Emily. We're just having fun." "Those aren't yours to have fun with," I said, keeping my voice level. "Please put everything back exactly as you found it." After her friends left, we had our first major argument. "Why are you so uptight about your precious clothes?" Brooklyn demanded. "It's not like they're actually expensive. Madison's mom buys her real designer stuff, not the outlet mall knockoffs you get." That stung, especially since I'd researched each purchase carefully. First of all, my clothes aren't knockoffs. Second, I work hard for everything I buy. And third, those precious clothes help me make the income that pays for this home. The food you eat, and yes, your entire college education. "Whatever," Brooklyn snapped. "It's so embarrassing having friends over here. Everyone else's family helps them out. Madison's parents got her a condo near campus so she doesn't have to live in the gross dorms. Taylor's dad pays for her to fly first class home every other weekend. Even Alexis, whose parents are like the poorest of our friends, gets a $3,000 monthly allowance." I took a deep breath, realizing I needed to start educating her about our actual financial situation. "Brooklyn, that's not sustainable financial planning. I'm providing you with a comprehensive education package worth over $60,000 per year when you factor in tuition, housing, meal plans, and your allowance. That's more than many families' entire household income." "Well, your best sucks," she said, storming out. I stood there in my bedroom, looking at my disheveled closet, wondering how I had failed to communicate the reality of what I was providing for her. The spreadsheets and investment accounts meant nothing if she couldn't understand their value. After that, the tension just kept escalating. Brooklyn started borrowing my things without asking my laptop when hers was too slow, my car when hers was too embarrassing to drive her friends in, cash from my wallet that she never replaced. Each confrontation followed the same pattern. Brooklyn would act entitled. I would set a boundary, she would explode with anger or tears. I would give in just enough to keep the peace, and nothing would actually change. Meanwhile, I was noticing disturbing posts on her social media. There she was at a vineyard, captioned "Family Weekend" at our favourite winery. We had never been to a vineyard together, though I had been researching wine as an alternative investment. Another photo showed her driving a Mercedes new car day. Thanks, Mum and Dad. When I knew for a fact she was still driving the used Honda Civic I had purchased after careful research into reliability and resale value. When I confronted her about these lies, she became defensive. "It's just social media, Emily. Everyone exaggerates. I'm trying to build a personal brand for after college. No one wants to follow someone boring and poor. But we're not poor, Brooklyn. We're in the top 15% of household income in this city, which is pretty amazing considering I've been building our wealth since I was 18. And lying about who you are isn't building a brand, it's creating a fiction you'll never be able to maintain." That's when she dropped a bombshell. "Well, maybe if you hadn't insisted on playing mom instead of letting me live with Aunt Margaret, we would have had a normal life. Her husband is a doctor. I could have had everything my friends have." The accusation left me speechless. Had she been resenting me all these years for keeping her with me? Had my carefully planned financial sacrifices been a mistake in her eyes? The questions haunted me, but I still wasn't prepared for what happened next. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late March. I was on a crucial Zoom call with our biggest potential client when Brooklyn burst into my home office without knocking. I gave her the universal "not now" hand signal and continued my presentation about diversified portfolio management. Instead of leaving, she hovered in my peripheral vision, sighing loudly and checking her watch in an exaggerated manner. "I'll email those projections right away, Mr. Harrington," I said, trying to wrap up professionally despite Brooklyn's distractions. "The risk-adjusted returns on this portfolio configuration should exceed your target by at least 3%. Thank you for your time." The second I ended the call, Brooklyn pounced. "Finally, I've been waiting forever. I need to talk to you about something important." "Brooklyn, you can't just barge in during my work calls." That was a potential $1 million client account. She waved away my concern. "This is more important. I need $22,000 by Friday." I thought I'd misheard her. "Excuse me, $22,000 by Friday," she repeated, as casually as if asking to borrow $20. "What on earth for?" I asked, already pulling up my financial planning software to see what kind of emergency could possibly require that amount. Brooklyn pulled out her phone and showed me a professionally designed digital invitation. It's for the Spring Awakening Hamptons retreat. Everyone who matters at Northeastern is going. It's a weekend picnic experience at this exclusive estate. Look! She scrolled through photos of a magnificent oceanfront property with manicured gardens and a mansion that looked like something from The Great Gatsby. The picnic appeared to be a luxury event with white tents, crystal chandeliers, and staff in formal attire. This looks like a wedding, not a picnic, I said, my financial advisor instincts immediately analyzing the cost breakdown. And what exactly costs $22,000? Brooklyn sighed as if I was being deliberately obtuse. The basic package is $5,000 per person, which covers the venue, accommodations, and food. But that's just for nobodies who want to say they were there. The VIP experience is $15,000, which includes the private cabana section, champagne service, the celebrity chef tasting menu, and the gift bags with the good stuff. And the other $7,000, I asked, already calculating what that money could earn in my investment portfolio over the next decade. Transportation, obviously. We need to book the helicopter service now, or we'll be stuck taking the jitney like scholarship students. Plus, I need a new outfit. Madison's wearing Versace, and I can't show up in more clothes. I took a deep breath, my financial planning training kicking in. Brooklyn, this is financially irresponsible on multiple levels. I don't liquidate $22,000 from investment portfolios for a weekend party, especially when that money could compound to over $100,000 by the time you're 30. Her face hardened. It's not just a party, Emily. It's a networking event. The Richardsons will be there, as in Richardson Media Group. Taylor's dad is introducing us. This could set up my entire career. I tried reasoning with her using my professional expertise. If you're interested in media internships, I can leverage my client network. I manage portfolios for several media executives. I can arrange proper introductions that don't require a $22,000 investment. Your contacts are local nobodies, she dismissed. This is national. Brooklyn, even if I wanted to. Liquidating that amount from my investment accounts would trigger tax implications and potentially disrupt my rebalancing strategy. I have a mortgage, operating expenses for my business, and yes, your education fund to maintain. What about your emergency fund or your stock portfolio? I know you have money invested. Her eyes narrowed. Or you could sell some of your precious designer clothes. It's not like you need 20 different dresses to sit on Zoom calls all day. I was stunned by her calculation, how she'd clearly been thinking about my financial assets and where she could extract money from. The answer is no, Brooklyn. I'm happy to help you build a professional network through strategic introductions. But I'm not liquidating investment assets to finance a $22,000 weekend party. Brooklyn's face contorted with rage. You've never supported my dreams. You're just jealous that I have friends from good families while you're stuck in this pathetic little condo with your pathetic little job. That pathetic little job has generated over $180,000 in investment returns, specifically for your education. I shot back, my own temper rising. And if your friends from good families expect you to spend $22,000 on a picnic, they're teaching you unsustainable financial habits. You don't understand anything about my world, Brooklyn spat. This event could change my life, but you're too selfish to help me. You've always resented me for ruining your college experience. You've always made me feel like a burden. Her words hit like physical blows. That's not true, I said quietly. I've dedicated my entire adult life and my professional expertise to building your financial foundation. Foundation? She laughed bitterly. You've kept me dependent on you. Aunt Margaret would have given me a normal life with normal things, instead of making me feel guilty for wanting what everyone else has. I felt a surge of anger I'd never experienced before. Get out of my office. Now. Brooklyn's eyes widened. I'd never spoken to her that way. Then her expression hardened. Fine, but you'll regret this. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard my investment certification certificates fell off the wall and shattered. I sat in stunned silence, trying to process what had just happened. Had I been wrong all these years, thinking I was helping her? Had I somehow created this entitled person who could demand $22,000 as if it were pocket change, with no understanding of the careful financial planning required to generate that kind of liquidity? I called my friend Samantha, who'd known us since before our parents died and understood my financial planning background. Am I crazy, or is this completely unreasonable? I asked after explaining the situation. You're not crazy, Samantha assured me. That's beyond entitled. I'm worried about Brooklyn if she thinks demanding $22,000 for a party is normal financial behavior. Should I have handled it differently? I wondered aloud. Emily, you've done more for that girl than most people would. You've built her an entire financial foundation. At some point, she needs to understand the value of money and the work required to generate it. After we hung up, I tried to return to work but couldn't focus. I pulled up Brooklyn's education investment account and stared at the numbers. Nearly $200,000 had passed through this account over the year's tuition payments. Housing costs, meal plans, her generous allowance, textbooks, study abroad programs, even the laptop she'd casually mentioned needing. Brooklyn had been making increasingly expensive demands over the past year: a spring break trip to Cancun, $3,000, a Canada Goose Parker, $800, a MacBook Pro when her perfectly good laptop was only a year old, $2,500. But this was on another level entirely. I decided to try a different approach. That evening, I knocked on Brooklyn's bedroom door with a peace offering of her favorite takeout and a printout of her education investment account summary. Can we talk? She was lying on her bed, aggressively typing on her phone, and didn't look up. Unless you've reconsidered, we have nothing to talk about. I set the food down on her desk along with the financial documents. I thought maybe you should see the actual numbers behind your education. Maybe we could discuss some financially responsible alternatives to this event. There are no alternatives. She cut me off without even glancing at the papers. Either you help me or you don't. And if you don't, I'll know exactly where I stand with you. Brooklyn, that's not fair. I would help you if the request made financial sense, but $22,000 represents over 10% of your total education investment fund. Save it, she interrupted again. I don't want to hear your excuses. Madison's mom is taking her shopping for the event tomorrow. Taylor's dad booked their helicopter already. And even Alexis's parents are coming through for her. You're the only one being difficult. I tried one last time. I can allocate $500 from my discretionary spending budget toward a nice outfit, if that would help. Or I could arrange a professional networking lunch with some of my media contacts. Brooklyn looked at me with utter disdain. $500? That wouldn't even cover the sales tax on decent shoes for this event. Just leave me alone. As I left her room, I heard her mutter, "You're going to be sorry." I should have taken the threat more seriously. I should have recognized the warning signs of someone who had completely lost perspective on financial reality. 2 days later, I had an evening client dinner that ran late. It was nearly midnight when I pulled into our building's parking garage, exhausted but pleased with how the meeting had gone. I'd just secured a new high-net-worth client whose portfolio would generate substantial management fees. As I rode the elevator up to our floor, I caught a faint smell of smoke. My first thought was that someone was having an unauthorized barbecue on their balcony, something our building management had explicitly forbidden due to fire safety regulations and insurance requirements. I hurried to our door, prepared to check if Brooklyn had noticed the smell too, and possibly call building security. But when I opened the door, the smoke was stronger, and it was coming from inside our home. I rushed through the living room toward the balcony, where I could see flickering light. What I found stopped me cold. There on our small outdoor space was a metal wastebasket with flames leaping 3 feet high. Brooklyn stood beside it, phone in hand, filming the blaze. Hanging from a makeshift clothesline strung across the balcony railing were several of my dresses, or what remained of them. As I watched in horror, Brooklyn reached up, unclipped a midnight blue Elie Tahari dress I'd worn to a company awards ceremony, and dangled it over the flames. "Brooklyn!" I screamed. "What are you doing?" She turned, her face illuminated by the firelight, and I barely recognized her. There was a cold satisfaction in her expression that chilled me despite the heat from the fire. "Making a point," she said calmly, dropping the dress into the flames. It caught immediately, the delicate fabric curling and blackening. But this time, my financial planning instincts kicked in immediately. I grabbed my phone and started recording, documenting the destruction for insurance purposes while simultaneously calling 911. "This is Emily Mitchell at Harborview Condominiums, Unit 2847, I said calmly to the dispatcher. "I have a fire emergency on a high-rise balcony. The person responsible is still on scene. I need police and fire department immediately." Brooklyn's face went white. "Emily, hang up the phone. We can work this out." "Why?" I asked, still recording while talking to the dispatcher. They're just things, right? That's what you always tell me when I explain the financial value of purchases. Material things aren't important, Emily. We need to be financially responsible, Emily. Well, I decided to be financially responsible and protect my assets through proper insurance documentation. I could hear sirens in the distance. My years of financial planning had taught me to document everything, to think strategically even in crisis situations. "Mom, are you in immediate danger?" the dispatcher asked. "No, but there's been intentional destruction of property exceeding $15,000 in value. And the perpetrator has created a fire hazard in a high-rise building with over 200 units." Brooklyn was now frantically trying to extinguish the flames, realizing the gravity of what she'd done. But I had already documented everything: the premeditation, the dollar value of destroyed items, the safety violations. I looked around at the devastation with my financial advisor's eye for detail. At least 15 dresses were completely destroyed, either already burned or damaged beyond repair by smoke and embers. My entire collection, accumulated over years of strategic purchasing: the Tahari I'd bought as a business investment, the Ralph Lauren I'd worn to secure my first major client, the black Calvin Klein that had helped me project authority in countless presentations, all gone. The financial loss was devastating, easily over $15,000 in replacement value. But more than that, Brooklyn had just committed multiple felonies while creating a paper trail that would have serious legal and financial consequences. "Brooklyn Mitchell," I said formally as the sirens grew louder, "you have just committed arson, destruction of property, and endangered the lives of over 200 residents in this building. As your former guardian and current financial advisor, I am no longer able to provide you with financial support. You will need to secure your own legal representation." The shock on her face told me she was finally beginning to understand the real-world consequences of her actions. Within minutes, our building was swarming with emergency responders. Fire department, police, building security, and even the building's insurance adjuster who lived on site. I handed over my phone with the video evidence to the responding officer while simultaneously calling my insurance company's 24-hour claims line. "This is Emily Mitchell, policy number FL847293. I need to report a deliberate arson incident with property damage exceeding $15,000. I have video documentation and police report number will be available within the hour." Brooklyn stood in handcuffs, finally understanding that her actions had crossed from family drama into criminal territory. The arresting officer was reading her rights while the fire marshal documented the scene for his report. "Mrs. Mitchell," the lead detective approached me, "we'll need your full statement. But from what we've observed and the video evidence, this appears to be a clear case of intentional arson and destruction of property. The fact that it occurred in a high-rise building elevates this to a felony." I nodded, my financial planning training helping me stay focused on the practical next steps. "I'll need copies of all reports for my insurance claim. I also have detailed purchase receipts and photographs of the destroyed items in my home filing system." Michael arrived 30 minutes later, having rushed back from his business trip after I called him. He took one look at the scene and immediately understood the gravity of the situation. "How bad is the damage?" he asked quietly. "Financial loss is approximately $18,000 in destroyed clothing and property damage to the balcony," I said, consulting the notes I'd been taking. "But the legal consequences for Brooklyn are going to be much more serious. This isn't a family dispute anymore, it's a criminal case." As Brooklyn was led away by police, she turned back to me with desperation in her eyes. "Emily, please, you can't let them arrest me. What about my future? What about college?" I looked at her with the same calm I used when explaining difficult financial realities to my clients. "Brooklyn, you made these choices. The consequences are the natural result of your decisions. I can no longer enable this behavior." I went inside, locked myself in my bathroom, and slid down against the door until I was sitting on the cold tile floor. Then I finally let myself break down completely, sobbing until I could barely breathe. Through the window, I could hear the last of the emergency vehicles leaving. The building was finally quiet again, but my world had been turned completely upside down. Not just by the property damage, but by the realization that my sister, the person I'd devoted my entire adult life to protecting and providing for, had just committed a felony against me. I spent the night sitting on the bathroom floor, trying to process how we had arrived at this point. Where had I gone wrong? Had I given too much? Not enough? Had I failed to set proper boundaries? Or had I been too focused on the financial aspects while missing the emotional development she needed? The questions circled endlessly as the scent of smoke and burned fabric seeped under the door. A constant reminder of what I had lost. Not just dresses, but possibly my sister too. I must have fallen asleep on the bathroom floor because I woke up stiff and disoriented as sunlight streamed through the small window. For a blissful moment, I didn't remember what had happened. Then the smell hit me, smoke and melted synthetic fabric, and it all came rushing back. I checked my phone, 47 missed calls and 73 text messages from Brooklyn, ranging from furious, "You're dead to me," to panicked. "Please answer, I have nowhere to go," to manipulative, "If you ever loved me, you'll call me back." The timestamps showed they'd continued until about 400 a.m., sent from the county jail. There were also messages from numbers I didn't recognize. Brooklyn's friends, I assumed, calling me every name in the book for having poor Brooklyn arrested. One particularly disturbing text from Madison read, "Brooklyn told us everything about how you've always been jealous of her because she's prettier and more popular than you ever were. You're pathetic. Is that really what Brooklyn thought of me? What she told her friends? Had I been seen as the jealous older sister all this time, rather than the person who had sacrificed everything to give her opportunities?" I forced myself to shower and change, then ventured downstairs. The house was eerily quiet without. Brooklyn's constant music and phone conversations. In the kitchen, I found evidence of her hasty departure drawers left open, a broken glass on the floor, the refrigerator door slightly ajar. I made coffee and steeled myself to assess the damage on the balcony. It was even worse in daylight. The balcony railing was scorched and wisps of burned fabric littered the outdoor furniture. The makeshift clothesline still held the remains of several dresses, now just blackened scraps clinging to clothespins. The metal wastebasket had warped from the heat, and a pile of ashes sat inside. I stirred them with a wooden spoon, watching fragments of what had once been beautiful things float up and then settle again. My phone rang. Samantha. "Hey, I got your texts. Are you okay? Do you need me to come over?" "I'm not okay," I admitted, "but I need to handle some business calls first. Can I call you back?" I hung up and opened my laptop. With steady hands, I logged into my financial planning software and began implementing the crisis management protocols I'd developed for my clients. First step, immediate financial separation. I opened Brooklyn's education investment account and paused. The automatic monthly transfers. There it was, Northeastern University tuition payment, scheduled for next week. $11,189 for the upcoming semester. With a few clicks, I cancelled it. Next, I drafted a formal letter to Northeastern's financial aid office. As a financial advisor, I knew the importance of proper documentation. "Dear Financial Aid Office, this is Emily Mitchell writing regarding my sister. Brooklyn Mitchell, student ID 847293. I am formally notifying you that due to criminal charges filed against Ms. Mitchell on date, I am immediately terminating all financial support effective date. Enclosed, please find documentation of the $180,000 I have invested in Ms. Mitchell's education to date, including tuition payments, housing costs, meal plans, and monthly allowances. Ms. Mitchell will need to make alternative arrangements before the payment deadline for the fall semester. Please direct all future communications regarding Ms. Mitchell's financial status to her directly, as I am no longer financially responsible for her education. Sincerely, Emily Mitchell, CFP." I attached the detailed spreadsheets I'd been maintaining for years, documenting every payment, every investment transaction, every disbursement from her education fund. My next call was to my attorney, James Chen, who specialized in both family law and financial planning for high-net-worth individuals. "Emily, I heard about the arrest. What do you need from me?" "Complete financial separation from Brooklyn immediately," I said, pulling up my carefully organized files. "I need to revoke any power of attorney documents, remove her from my emergency contacts, and most importantly, I need to legally terminate my financial support obligations. That's going to require some careful paperwork, especially given your guardian relationship and the education funding you've provided." "I have everything documented," I assured him. "Every payment, every investment transaction, every disbursement from her education fund. I need this handled professionally and completely. I'll draft the documents today. You'll also want to consider filing a civil lawsuit for restitution of the property damage." I hadn't thought about that yet, but he was right. "What would that look like?" "Based on what you've described, you're looking at $15,000 to $20,000 in damages. We can seek full restitution plus attorney fees. It would be separate from the criminal case. Do it, I said without hesitation. Brooklyn needs to understand that actions have financial consequences. My third call was to my insurance agent, who had been expecting my call. Emily, I've reviewed your policy and the police report. You're covered for up to $25,000 in personal property destruction, and the liability coverage will handle any building damage. But I have to ask, are you planning to pursue civil restitution from your sister? Yes, I said without hesitation. This wasn't an accident or a family squabble. This was intentional destruction of assets. I want full restitution, and I want it documented legally. I'll coordinate with your attorney then. We'll need detailed receipts for everything that was destroyed. I spent the next 4 hours documenting every destroyed item purchase date, original price, current replacement cost, photographs from my social media posts showing me wearing the items. My years of financial record-keeping served me well. By noon, I had received calls from 3 different journalists who had somehow gotten wind of the story. A college student arrested for arson because her sister wouldn't fund a $22,000 party was apparently newsworthy. No comment, I told each of them. This is a legal matter being handled through appropriate channels. But I did call my business mentor, Patricia Williams, who ran a wealth management firm with over $500 million in assets under management. Patricia, I need advice on a professional level. How do successful financial advisors handle family members who become liabilities to their business reputation? Emily, what happened to your sister could actually strengthen your credibility, she said thoughtfully. You applied the same discipline to your personal life that you apply to client portfolios. You didn't let emotion override sound financial judgment. That's exactly what high net worth clients want to see. She was right. Within 48 hours, I had received calls from 3 potential new clients who had heard about my principled approach to financial decision-making through the professional network. One more thing, Patricia added. Document everything that happens next. This experience could become a case study in how to handle financial boundaries with family members. A lot of wealthy families struggle with exactly these issues. Brooklyn, meanwhile, was discovering what life looked like without my financial safety net. She had been released on bail, paid for by Aunt Margaret, but the conditions were strict no contact with me, no access to any of the accounts I controlled, and mandatory enrollment in a financial responsibility course as part of her pretrial agreement. After hanging up, I called Samantha back. Can I stay with you for a few days? I can't be in this apartment right now. Already making up the guest room, she replied without hesitation. Pack a bag. I'll pick you up in an hour. As I packed, my phone kept buzzing with texts from Brooklyn Madison's parents don't want me staying here past tonight. Where am I supposed to go? Answer me. You're ruining my life. I turned off my notifications. Before leaving, I did one more thing. I gathered printed copies of all the tuition payments, housing fees and allowance transfers I'd made for Brooklyn over the past 3 years. Nearly $180,000 in total. I put them in a large envelope and left it on the kitchen counter where she would see it if she came back to the apartment. On top, I placed a note that read, "This is what I've been doing with my money instead of taking luxury vacations or buying a bigger apartment. Your education was my priority. Now it needs to be yours." Then I locked up and left, not sure when I'd be ready to return. At Samantha's apartment, I finally broke down completely, telling her everything. Not just about the fire, but about the years of increasing entitlement, the lies Brooklyn told her friends, the growing resentment. I feel like I failed, I admitted, curled up on Samantha's couch with a mug of tea gone cold. Like everything I've done for the past 14 years has been for nothing. You haven't failed, Samantha said firmly. Brooklyn made her choices. You can love someone and still hold them accountable. But what if I made her this way? What if my attempts to protect her from financial hardship backfired? Samantha considered this. Maybe there's some truth to that. But Emily, you were 18 when you took on raising a child. You did the best you could with what you knew. And now you're doing the right thing by refusing to enable harmful behavior. I nodded, but the guilt and grief still felt overwhelming. I always promised our parents I'd take care of her. Taking care of someone doesn't mean letting them walk all over you, Samantha pointed out. Sometimes the most caring thing you can do is let someone face the natural consequences of their actions. That night, lying in Samantha's guest room, I made a decision. I would not reach out to Brooklyn first. I would not rescue her from this situation. For once, she would have to figure things out on her own. It was the hardest decision I'd ever made, harder than taking custody of Brooklyn. Harder than working multiple jobs while going to school. Harder than all the sacrifices that came before. Because this time, I was choosing not to sacrifice. I was choosing myself. And I had no idea if I was doing the right thing. The first week at Samantha's place passed in a blur. I worked remotely, took long walks through her neighborhood to clear my head, and slept more than I had in years. It felt strange not to be responsible for anyone but myself, both liberating and disorienting. Brooklyn's messages continued relentlessly, evolving as the days passed. The initial anger, "I hate you," gave way to manipulation. "I'm sleeping in my car. Are you happy now?" Then to bargaining, "If you let me come home, I'll pay you back for the dresses." And finally to desperate pleading, "Please, Emily, I don't know what to do." I read them all but didn't respond. Each message was like ripping off a bandage, painful but necessary. Samantha kept reminding me that I wasn't abandoning Brooklyn. I was giving her an opportunity to stand on her own feet. "You've been enabling her for years," Samantha pointed out one evening as we sat on her balcony. "Not intentionally, but you've protected her from every consequence. She's never had to experience real financial stress or make hard choices. How is she supposed to learn responsibility?" On day 9, the harassment escalated. Brooklyn's friends started posting about me on social media, calling me a psycho sister who had her own sister arrested for family drama. One particularly viral post included a heavily edited clip from Brooklyn's Arson video, showing only my shocked and angry reaction without the context of what she'd done. The caption read, "This is what emotional abuse looks like. She controls her sister with money, then loses it when called out." The post was shared hundreds of times. I received dozens of hateful messages from strangers. Someone even found my work email and contacted my boss, suggesting the company should reconsider employing someone so unstable. Thankfully, my boss knew me well enough to question this random accusation. When I explained the situation, showing her the full video Brooklyn had conveniently not shared publicly, she was supportive. "Family drama happens to everyone," she said. "Just keep doing the excellent work you always do." Still, the public shaming was excruciating. I'd always been a private person, and now intimate details of my life were being dissected by strangers online. Worse, Brooklyn's narrative that I was controlling and abusive was so far from the truth that I couldn't even recognize myself in her description. After 2 weeks, on Samantha's recommendation, I started seeing a therapist. "Dr. Winters," I said in our first session, pouring out the whole story, ending with my gnawing guilt. "I keep thinking I should just give in. Let her come home, keep paying for everything. It would be easier." "Easier in the short term," Dr. Winters agreed. "But what about the long term? What kind of adult would Brooklyn become if there are never consequences for her actions?" "I'm afraid I've already failed her," I said quietly. "Emily, you've been in a codependent relationship with your sister," Dr. Winters explained. "You've been the enabler, and she's become dependent on that enabling. Breaking that pattern is painful for both of you, but necessary for healthy development." "Codependent?" I repeated, surprised by the term. I thought that was for romantic relationships. "It applies to any relationship where one person sacrifices their own needs to meet the other's, while the other person takes advantage of that sacrifice." Does that sound familiar? It did. Painfully so. Over the next few sessions, we explored how I'd fallen into the enabler role out of love and guilt, and how Brooklyn had learned to manipulate those feelings to get what she wanted. We also discussed healthier boundaries for the future, if there was to be a future relationship between us. "The irony," Dr. Winters pointed out in our third session, "is that your financial planning skills, which are so successful in your professional life, may have worked against you in this relationship. You planned for every contingency except the one where Brooklyn needed to experience natural consequences." "What do you mean?" "You created a financial safety net so comprehensive that Brooklyn never learned to swim. She never had to work for anything, never had to make difficult choices, never had to understand the connection between effort and reward. Meanwhile, the practical consequences of my decision were playing out. 3 weeks after the burning incident, I received an automated email from Northeastern University Financial Status Change Alert for student Brooklyn Mitchell. Brooklyn had been informed that her tuition payment had been cancelled and her status for the fall semester was in jeopardy. That same day, Aunt Margaret called. "Brooklyn reached out to me," she said without preamble. "She wanted to know if she could come stay with me until Emily calms down." "What did you tell her?" I asked, holding my breath. I told her she could come, but only if she understands this isn't a vacation. She'd need to get a job, contribute to household expenses, and follow our rules. And she said she'd think about it. Margaret paused. Emily, I also told her I'd seen the video of what she did to your clothes. The full video, not the edited version she's been sharing. I made it clear I don't condone that behavior, and neither would her parents if they were here. A lump formed in my throat. Thank you for that. She needs to hear the truth from someone besides me. I regret not being more involved all these years, Margaret said quietly. I thought you had everything under control, but maybe Brooklyn needed more people setting boundaries. Not just one person providing everything. The conversation with Margaret gave me hope that Brooklyn might still have a path forward, even if it wasn't the one either of us had imagined. 4 weeks after the incident, I finally returned to my apartment. Samantha came with me for moral support. I'd half expected to find it trashed, but everything was mostly as I'd left it. The envelope of financial documents was gone from the counter, but there was no note or acknowledgement from Brooklyn. The balcony still showed signs of the fire-scorched railing, dead plants where embers had fallen. I hired a professional cleaning service to remove the smoke damage inside the apartment and a contractor to repair the balcony. Erasing the physical evidence helped, but the emotional scars remained raw. 5 weeks in, Brooklyn's social media harassment campaigns suddenly stopped. Her friends' posts about me were deleted. I later learned from Margaret that Brooklyn had tried to move in with 3 different friends, wearing out her welcome each time when it became clear she expected to be supported without contributing. Reality was setting in. 6 weeks after the incident, I received a text from Brooklyn that was different from all the others I'm moving to Oregon to stay with Aunt Margaret. She's helping me find a job. I don't expect you to care, but I thought you should know. I stared at the message for a long time before responding simply, I wish you well. It wasn't forgiveness, I wasn't ready for that, but it was acknowledgement. A small step. Margaret confirmed that Brooklyn was indeed coming to Oregon. She's subdued, Margaret reported. Nothing like the confident girl I remember from her last visit. I think she's starting to realize the seriousness of her situation. With Brooklyn on the other side of the country, I slowly began rebuilding my life. I found a new apartment in a different neighborhood somewhere with no memories of betrayal. I donated the few items that had survived the fire, unable to look at them without remembering that night. With my first bonus after the incident, I took myself shopping for new work clothes, methodically rebuilding my professional wardrobe one carefully chosen piece at a time. This time, I approached each purchase differently, not just as an investment in my career, but as a symbol of my independence and resilience. Samantha and some other friends took me out to celebrate my fresh start. During dinner, Samantha raised her glass in a toast to Emily, who gives so much to everyone else, but is finally learning to save some for herself. I felt tears prick my eyes, but they weren't entirely sad tears. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt something like hope. Not for fixing the past, but for creating a future on my own terms. That night, I received an unexpected email from Brooklyn's university account. Financial aid office says I need to fill out independence verification because I'm not living with you anymore. Can you sign the form confirming you're not supporting me? It's attached. No apology, no acknowledgement of what she'd done. Just a practical request. I signed the form and sent it back without comment. 2 days later, another email arrived. This one slightly less businesslike, form received. Thanks. Starting community college here in September if I can save enough from my job by then. Progress, I supposed. At least she was thinking about her education again. The strangest part of the separation was the silence. After 14 years of orienting my entire life around Brooklyn's needs, the absence of her constant demands left a void. I had to relearn who I was when not defined as someone's guardian or provider. Dr. Winters called it reclaiming my identity, and while the process was uncomfortable, it was also necessary. I started small, taking a Saturday pottery class I'd always been interested in, joining a book club, accepting dinner invitations I would have previously declined to be home with Brooklyn. I reconnected with college friends I'd lost touch with during the demanding years of raising her. I even went on a few dates, though nothing serious developed. You're different, my friend Lisa commented after we'd met for coffee. More relaxed. More. Yourself. What do you mean? For years, every conversation we had somehow became about Brooklyn, her problems, her needs, her drama. You never talked about what you wanted or needed. It's like you'd forgotten you were a person separate from being her caretaker. The observation stung because it was true. I had lost myself in the role of provider and protector. 3 months after the burning incident, I received a letter, an actual paper letter, from Brooklyn. The Oregon postmark and unfamiliar handwriting made me hesitate before opening it. Inside was a single-page Emily. I'm working at a coffee shop and a clothing store. Aunt Margaret makes me pay rent and do chores. It sucks, but I guess it's fair. I saw the tuition statements you left. I didn't know you were paying everything. I thought my scholarship covered most of it. I don't know what else to say right now. Brooklyn. Not an apology, but an acknowledgement. Another small step. I folded the letter and put it in my desk drawer, not ready to respond, but not willing to throw it away either. Some wounds take longer than others to heal. 6 months after Brooklyn burned my dresses and our relationship seemed to go up in flames with them, I found myself in a very different place, literally and figuratively. My new apartment, though smaller than the downtown condo, felt more like me. Gone were the compromises I'd made to accommodate a teenager's tastes and needs. The space reflected my personality in a way my previous home never had, with clean lines, thoughtful details, and artwork I'd carefully selected. More importantly, I'd found a rhythm to my life that felt sustainable. Work was going well. I'd earned a promotion that had been in the works before the incident. My focus actually improved without the constant drama at home. My social circle had expanded beyond Emily, Brooklyn's sister, to just Emily, a person with her own interests, opinions, and boundaries. Dr. Winters had helped me understand that my relationship with Brooklyn had never been entirely healthy. Not because I didn't love her, but because I loved her in a way that prevented both of us from growing. I'd been so determined to protect her from the hardships I'd faced that I'd inadvertently prevented her from developing resilience and gratitude. My intentions were good, but the execution had been flawed. The hardest lesson for natural caregivers, Dr. Winters told me in one of our sessions, is learning that you can't save someone from their own journey. Sometimes the most loving thing is to step back and let them find their own way. I was still processing this wisdom when another letter arrived from Oregon. This one was thicker than the first, several pages folded inside an envelope adorned with a coffee stain, and Brooklyn's increasingly familiar adult handwriting. "Dear Emily," it began, "I don't know how to write this letter. I've started it at least 20 times. Aunt Margaret says I should just speak from the heart, but I'm not sure what my heart is saying anymore. I'm sorry. Those words feel so small compared to what I did, but they're the only ones I have. I'm sorry for burning your dresses. I'm sorry for the awful things I said to you. I'm sorry for the lies I told my friends about you. I'm sorry for taking you for granted all these years. When Mom and Dad died, I was too young to really understand what was happening. All I knew was that you were suddenly both my sister and my parent, and everything was different. As I got older, I started resenting the limitations of our life without ever acknowledging your sacrifices. I watched my friends get things easily that you had to work so hard to provide for us. And instead of being grateful, I became bitter. College made it worse. I fell in with people who measure worth by material things, and I wanted so desperately to belong that I started living a fantasy life I couldn't afford. The lies snowballed until I couldn't separate fact from fiction anymore. The person I became, the person who could destroy something precious to you out of spite, is someone I don't want to be. These past months have been the hardest of my life, but also the most educational. Aunt Margaret doesn't coddle me the way I expected. I work 50 hours a week between 2 jobs, pay rent, buy my own groceries, and do my share of household chores. At first I was angry about it, but recently I realized something for the first time in my life. I'm proud of myself. Not because someone gave me something, but because I earned it. I'm saving for community college. It's not Northeastern, but maybe that's good. I need to find my own path, not one I think will impress others. Margaret says she'll help with books if I maintain a B average. I don't expect forgiveness. What I did was unforgivable, but I wanted you to know that I'm trying to become someone better than the person who hurt you so terribly. With love and deepest regrets, Brooklyn. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. Not because of the apology, though that was more than I'd expected, but because I could hear a maturity in Brooklyn's words that hadn't been there before. The entitled girl who demanded $22,000 for a weekend party was growing into a young woman who understood the value of work and self-sufficiency. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I took the letter to my next session with Dr. Winters. "What are you feeling?" she asked after reading it. "Relief," I admitted, and sadness, and a tiny bit of hope. But also caution. Words are easy. Change is hard. Very true, Dr. Winters agreed. What would a healthy relationship with Brooklyn look like to you now? I considered the question carefully. One with boundaries. One where I can be her sister, not her provider or enabler. One where we both acknowledge the past but aren't defined by it. That sounds like a good place to start, she said. Remember, reconciliation is a process, not an event. A week later, I finally wrote back to Brooklyn, "Dear Brooklyn, thank you for your letter. The apology means a lot to me. But what means even more is seeing you take responsibility for your life. I'm proud of you for working hard and saving for college. The truth is, I made mistakes too. I thought I was protecting you by shielding you from financial realities, but I ended up preventing you from developing the very skills you needed. I wanted so badly to give you the normal life our parents would have provided that I lost sight of what you actually needed, which was to learn how to stand on your own. I'm not ready for us to go back to how things were before. I don't think that would be healthy for either of us. But I am ready to start building something new, a relationship between two adult sisters who respect each other's boundaries. I've been thinking about your education. I believe in its importance as much as I ever did. So I'd like to propose something for every dollar you save toward community college. I'll match it. Not as a handout, but as an investment in your future that you're also investing in. This isn't unlimited. I'm setting a cap of $5,000 per year. And it's contingent on maintaining good grades. But it's a way I can support your efforts without enabling dependency. Let me know what you think about this offer. There's no pressure to accept. Love, Emily? Brooklyn's response came via email just days later. Emily, I don't deserve your generosity, but I accept your offer with gratitude. I'll make you proud of where your investment goes. I've already saved $200. Also, I got promoted to shift manager at the coffee shop. It's not much, but it's a start. Thank you for not giving up on me completely. Love, Brooklyn. Over the next few months, we established a new pattern of communication: emails, occasional phone calls, even video chats where we cautiously shared details of our separate lives. The conversations were sometimes awkward, sometimes stilted, but always honest in a way they hadn't been before. Brooklyn stuck to her word, working and saving diligently. She enrolled in community college for the spring semester, studying business administration. When she sent me her first tuition receipt for matching, I felt a complex mix of emotions: pride in her initiative, satisfaction in supporting her in this more balanced way, and a bittersweet acknowledgement of how different things might have been if we'd found this equilibrium sooner. 1 year after the burning incident, I invited Brooklyn to visit me in Boston during her spring break. We both approached the visit with trepidation, but it went better than either of us expected. There were difficult moments. Of course, passing the old downtown condo building that I'd sold, references to mutual acquaintances who'd taken sides during our estrangement. But there were good moments too, genuine laughter. Honest conversations, small steps toward healing. On her last night in Boston, Brooklyn handed me a small gift box. Inside was a simple silver necklace with 2 intertwined circles. "It's not expensive," she said quickly. "I bought it with my own money from the coffee shop job." The sales lady said it represents how 2 lives can be connected but still independent. I fastened it around my neck, touched by the symbolism. It's perfect. Later that night, after Brooklyn had gone to bed in my guest room, I sat alone reflecting on our journey. The pain of that burning night would always be part of our story, but it wasn't the whole story anymore. Out of those ashes, something new and potentially stronger was emerging: a relationship based on mutual respect rather than obligation and dependency. I'd learned that loving someone doesn't mean sacrificing yourself on the altar of their needs. That boundaries aren't selfish, they're necessary for healthy relationships. That sometimes the hardest decisions are the right ones, even when they break your heart in the moment. And Brooklyn was learning that actions have consequences. That respect is earned, not demanded. That true independence means taking responsibility for your choices, even the painful ones. We were both works in progress, our new relationship fragile but hopeful. I didn't know what the future held for us, but for the first time, I was optimistic that whatever came next, we would face it as 2 whole people, not as rescuer and rescued. Sometimes relationships need to burn down completely before they can be rebuilt properly. And sometimes what rises from those ashes is stronger, healthier, and more authentic than what came before. 2 years after Brooklyn burned my dresses and our relationship seemed to go up in flames with them, I received a call that changed everything. "Emily, I have news," Brooklyn said, her voice excited but nervous. I've been accepted to transfer to Boston University's finance program for next fall. I have academic scholarships that cover 60% of tuition, and I've saved enough to cover the rest through my jobs and the blog income. I'm not asking you to pay for anything. I'm telling you, because I want you to know that I'm finally ready to build my own financial foundation. I felt tears in my eyes. Brooklyn, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you. There's something else, she continued. I've been writing a blog about financial recovery and personal responsibility. It started as just journaling about my mistakes, but other people started reading it. Young adults who've made similar financial mistakes. Parents dealing with entitled kids. I'm actually making enough to help pay for college. The irony wasn't lost on me. Brooklyn's biggest mistake had become the foundation for her success. I'd love to read it, I said. I was hoping you'd say that, because I want to write about us. About what really happened, not the lies I told before. About how sometimes love means letting someone fall so they can learn to stand up. But only if you're okay with it. I thought about Dr. Winter's words about turning pain into purpose, about how our story might help other families navigating similar challenges. I think that would be healing, I said. For both of us. 3 months later, Brooklyn published a post titled, "The Day My Sister Had Me Arrested," and why it was the best thing that ever happened to me. It went viral, generating thousands of comments from people sharing their own stories of family financial drama and recovery. The post led to speaking opportunities for both of us. Me talking to financial advisors about family boundary setting, Brooklyn speaking to college students about financial responsibility and the real cost of social media pretending. When Brooklyn moved back to Boston for her junior year at BU, she rented her own small studio apartment near campus. She paid her own rent, bought her own groceries, and for the first time in her life, managed her own budget. "Want to grab dinner?" she texted me on her first night back in the city. "I'll pick the restaurant," I replied. "Somewhere nice, but within your budget." "Actually, I've been saving up," she texted back. "There's this place I've wanted to try. My treat." As I sat across from my sister in the restaurant she'd chosen and paid for, I realized we'd both become people our parents would be proud of. Not because we'd avoided pain or conflict, but because we'd faced it, learned from it, and emerged stronger. Brooklyn raised her water glass in a toast. To second chances. To doing the work, I countered. To family, she said, smiling. To healthy family, I corrected, and we both laughed. Sometimes relationships need to burn down completely before they can be rebuilt properly. And sometimes what rises from those ashes is stronger, healthier, and more authentic than what came before. But it requires both parties to commit to the hard work of real change, not just the appearance of change. What about you? Have you ever had to make difficult financial decisions about family members who were damaging your financial stability? How did you find the courage to set boundaries with someone you love while still maintaining hope for the relationship? Share your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Remember, sometimes the hardest financial decisions lead to the most important personal growth, both for you and the people you care about.